Hello and welcome to the Grove. Today we'll be continuing the story The Eye in the Abyss by Anthony Reynolds. This is part 3 in the series, so if you haven't seen part 1 or part 2, I recommend going back and watching those before watching this one.
They moved fast, Hala ice in her soul setting a punishing pace, though they did not take any undue risk. They climbed one at a time, first Hala, then Olar, then Sigvar, moving almost to the lengths of their ropes with each descent. In this way, they were able to keep a steady anchor in case of a fall, and the intermittent rest allowed them to keep progressing downward steadily without need for a longer pause. The Bridge of Sorrows was not the only one of its kind to cross the expanse. Dozens of others spanned the walls of the crevice, though only a few were visible at any one time. The distance, fog and darkness closing in like a shroud. All but the uppermost bridge had long been abandoned and remained unused, the myriad tunnels and gateways leading onto them having been sealed by avalanche or by the Frostguard themselves to limit the number of entrances into the citadel. The closest bridges were several hundred feet apart, yet the deeper they went, the more spaced out they became. Some had been destroyed completely, only the skeletal abutments protruding from the ice walls indicating where they had once been. It was dark, but not the complete, all-consuming darkness of midwinter. It was more akin to the faded half-light of the glooming hours. The ice itself seemed to radiate a dull ethereal glow, which reflected upon the thickening fog, such that the three did not need to carry torch or brand. The shrieking gale still whipped through the Raven, tugging at them like spectral hands trying to prise them from their tenuous hold on the ice. It was impossible to judge the passing of time. The hours blurred together into one single uninterrupted span. Climb, wait, climb, wait. On the climbs, Sigvar found a good rhythm, losing himself in the repetitive motion of hacking the ice picks in deep, kicking in the toe picks, and hauling the picks back out. While waiting for Hala and Olar to descend below him, he mouthed the litanies of truth, keeping himself focused. Resist not cold's embrace, for within it lies truth. Be as one with the ice, and understanding shall follow. Down and down they climbed, moving steadily. Hours might have passed, or a day. Unable to see the sky, Sigvar had no way to know. Endure without complaint. The ice begs not for mercy, nor offers it. Neither shall we. No lesser being would have been able to match their pace. They were iceborn, the children of the gods, and they were not as other mortals, able to march for days on end without sleep and still fight any foe to a standstill. They stoically endured that which would have killed any hearthbound. Even so, Sigvar's forearms were aching, and he was covered in a sheen of sweat beneath his skins and furs. And when the ice gave way beneath him, he was too slow to react. He struck out with one of his ice picks, but it did not bite deeply, and merely tore a chunk from the wall. Then, he was falling. Fear not pain, nor seek to avoid its blessing. Without it, there can be no life. Turning in the air, he made another attempt to arrest his fall, slamming a pick into the ice, but it tore from his grasp, and he would have lost it had it not been tethered to his wrist. And when death comes, flinch not from its approach. He dropped 40 feet, hurtling past Olar. The older man's flinty eyes were wide. From ice we are born, to ice we return. Brace! The old Frostguard warrior bellowed, tightening his grip and bending his legs in anticipation. He saw Hala look up and mouth a curse as she realized he was falling straight towards her. She moved quickly and assuredly, hacking her pick swiftly into the ice and shifting herself sideways so he didn't smash her from the cliffside. The rope caught his fall then, arresting it with bone-jarring abruptness. He slammed into the ice wall, the impact driving the air from his lungs. Olar roared as he took Sigvar's weight. Stonefist held, however, clinging to the ice, his arms as taut as iron. Sigvar recovered quickly, slamming his picks home and kicking his toe picks in deep. He glanced over at Hala Ice in her soul, who stared at him, her own piercing eyes, one blue, one white, as unblinking as the one painted on her forehead. She stared in silent judgment. We'll take the rest at the Bridge of Shadow, she said finally, and continuing climbing down into the twilight gloom. Sigvar cursed himself, his cheeks burning despite the cold. When Olar climbed down past him, he gave another of his wide, toothy grins.
"You're a heavy bastard, Half-Quiver,"
He said.
"Damn well nearly took us both down with you." "The ice gave way,"
said Sigvar weakly.
"I'll do better. See that you do. Might just cut your rope next time."
Sigvar looked at the old warrior quizzically. On 3 of the previous expeditions down into the abyss, Olar had been the only one to return alive. Was this why? At the Bridge of Shadow, they dropped their packs, uncoupled their ropes, and unhooked their ice picks. The bridge was named because even in midsummer, when the sun never dipped below the horizon, it was never truly in the light. Olar slumped to the flagstones with an exaggerated groan, propping his back against the low balustrade at the edge of the bridge. Hala stepped away from the other 2, unhooking a tiny black effigy of Lysandra from around her neck and placing it upon the ground. She knelt before it, breathing a devotion. Sigvar stood stock still, wondering if he too should take the time to pray, but Olar waved him over, urging him to sit. The older man, exactly how old he didn't know, but Olar was certainly well past 60, produced a small leather flask. Unstoppering it, he took a swig, gave a satisfied sigh, and handed it to Sigvar. The younger warrior took it with a nod of thanks, and knocked back a measure.
"Tears of the gods,"
said Olar.
"Nothing like it this side of Ridgeback Mountains."
The liquid burned hot in his throat, making his eyes water. Those tears turned instantly to ice on his cheeks. He nodded in appreciation and handed it back to Olar, who took another swig before secreting it back within his furs. A water skin would have frozen as soon as they stepped beyond the gates of the citadel. They would endure without, but the strong spirit was welcome moisture to Sigvar's throat. Olar's heavily tattooed arms were still bare, and Sigvar shook his head as he pulled his furs tighter around him.
"Aren't you freezing, old man?"
he said.
"It's going to get a lot colder than this, boy,"
said Olar, giving him an evil grin.
"This is like a summer breeze compared to what's yet to come."
Sigvar didn't know if he was joking. He pulled his pack over to his side and brought out a small strip of salted meat wrapped in waxed leather. He snapped off a frozen section and handed it to Olar before breaking off a piece for himself. He worked it around his mouth, thawing it enough to chew. It was tough and sinewy, but in that moment it seemed an extravagant luxury. Slumped with his back against the low wall alongside Olar, Sigvar was out of the worst of the howling wind, which itself was a blessing. It screamed over them, wailing horribly, sending flurries of ice and snow swirling across the bridge. Some said the sound of the wind was the screams of thousands of Iceborn killed in that final titanic battle in the Age of Heroes long ago, their souls trapped here forever in this chasm.
"It's a fearful sound, isn't it, lad?"
said Olar.
"Gets inside your head after a time." "Is it the same way all the way down?"
Olar shook his head.
"Would that it was. No. Down towards the bottom it's as silent as the grave. That's gotta be better than this. You'd think so, wouldn't you? But the silence is worse. It's heavy. That silence weighs upon you like full-length chainmail. No, I'd take this any day."
Hala finished her devotions and joined them, sitting alongside Olar. She took a long swig from Olar's flask, then wiped her mouth with the back of her gloved hand. "How is it you always have the best stuff, Stonefist?" she said, making Olar snort.
"Must be my charming personality,"
he replied. "I'm quite certain that it is not." Her expression was deadpan, making Olar snort once more. Sigvar leaned over, gingerly offering the same meat, still hot with shame at having fallen. She looked at it for half a moment, making Sigvar think that she was going to reject the offer, but finally she took it and nodded her thanks.
"How did you earn your name, Half-Quiver?"
she asked as she chewed.
"I was a raid. I was a tenderfoot accompanying a caravan escort, bringing provisions back to the citadel. We were attacked out on the frozen expanse. A blizzard had hidden their approach. Tuskro tribe."
Hala grunted.
"Dangerous warriors, head takers."
Sigvar nodded.
"I took some arrows in the skirmish. Kept fighting though. Stonefist honored me with the name once the last of the Tuskros had fled, leaving their dead and dying to the ice." "You'll never make a saga teller, boy," said Olar. "Too modest by half. No sense for the dramatic." Not like you, old one, said Hala. I swear your stories get more far-fetched with every telling. Have I told you my bear story, lad?
Olar asked, giving Sigvar a wink.
No,
said Hala, leveling a finger to the old Frostguard.
I will not hear that again. Another time, then,
said Olar with a resigning shrug.
Anyway, the Tuskgrows stuck the boy with no less than 12 arrows. You were only, 14 winters? He was a big lad, though, even then. Not quite the giant slab he is now, but still big. Had 4 arrows in his shield, 2 in one leg, 1 clean through his forearm, 2 in his chest, 1 in his shoulder, more in his back. But he kept on fighting, bellowing like a stuck Elnook. Took down 3 Tuskgrows before another arrow hit him, making him drop his sword. Still didn't slow him. He pulls one of the arrows out of him and kills another 2 Tuskgrows with it. One of the funniest damn things I ever saw. True Iceborn. Would have done Serilda herself proud. Fearless mother,
said Hala, instantly grasping the pale talisman of Serilda hanging around her neck alongside those of Evarosa and Lysandra.
Fearless mother,
Sigvar murmured. His face was burning, and he looked down uncomfortable with Olar's praise.
You have a strange sense of what is funny, Stonefist,
said Hala, pushing herself back to her feet.
Come, it is time to move on. I'm sorry I fell,
Sigvar said as he regained his feet and made ready for the next stage of the climb.
On my oath, I will not let either of you down again.
If you fall, it is the will of the 3, said Hala. And if you fall and take us down with you, then such is to be our fate also. Your oath matters nothing. She walked past him, looking for the best place to recommence their descent. Olar grinned and slapped a heavy hand on Sigvar's shoulder.
It's fine, lad. Happens to the best of us. If that's the worst we go through, we'll all be on our knees thanking the 3.
Down into the deep they continued, chased as always by the howls of the biting wind.